Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron Weber. I'm the host and producer of Hardfire Media, and welcome to another exciting edition of Hardfire Media Liberal Conversations, a series of screen media programs we are doing to discuss current events and to help get us through this unique time of unprecedented state exercise of power in certain places. We've made about 20 discussions since the March 2020 lockdown of these liberal conversations since the national emergency. And then I'm going to put up a graphic that shows how the current president has then re-upped the emergency, even though he was supposed to do the opposite of what all the previous president did. Okay. We should note that we are more than 18 months into a lockdown, which is supposed to last 3 weeks while we all get herd immunity. The state never lets a good crisis go to waste. We're seeing some loosening of restrictions. In New York City, we have the option to get a city-issued key to New York vaccination passport. I think they even offer a platinum card on that as well. Today, we are going to discuss the issue of homelessness in the city and the homeless. We have a guest from San Francisco, in addition to those of us from New York City. There seems to be an increasing amount of concern about homelessness in the politics and the press. Let's get some views from our guests on this issue. So now we'll introduce the interlocutors. We'll start with our new guest, Marcy Berry. Welcome to Hardfire Media, and thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Who I am, I'm just a grandma living in San Francisco and soon to leave California because after 20 years of activism, I think we all had enough. So we're leaving. And right now, I just run my business and take care of my granddaughters.
That's right. Would you like to say what your business is? Are you going to continue?
Yeah, for the past maybe 20 years, I've been doing payroll and for small businesses. Yeah. It's something I can do from home and I can take care of the family at the same time. So exactly. It works. Exactly.
Take a small business. That's very good. That's it.
Yeah.
One of the themes we've been discussing on this series is how the United States seems to be turning into corporatism, where large, special, connected businesses seem to be favored over small business.
Right.
Right. And then Matthew Morgan, welcome again to the show, and tell us about yourself.
Great to be back. These are always a lot of fun. My name is Matthew Morgan, chair of the Brooklyn Libertarian Party and city council candidate here in New York City for District 39.
Right, which covers this neighborhood in Sunset Park, but you miss, I'm in 38, and another friend of ours, Eric Frankel, is running for city council for District 38 in New York City, which covers where I am right now in Sunset Park. And next we've got Derek. Derek and I have been making Hardfire TV shows for about 6 or 7 years now. One of our most popular ones is The Economics of Disasters. Another one is Why People Are Leaving New York City, about business freedom, economic freedom. So welcome, Derek.
Hi, nice to be here. I'm Derek. I'm also, like Cameron, I'm a former chair of the Brooklyn LP.
Right.
I'm an off-grid urban homesteader here in Brooklyn. And I was actually up on my roof fixing solar panels earlier today.
Yes, Derek, Michael Weiss, and I also did a TV show on do-it-yourself electricity, which a couple of them for people that want alternatives to the monopolies and things like that. Okay, so thank you for participating in the discussion. Today we are talking about homelessness. I would like to start by introducing an idea from Voltaire, which I learned about from a Liberty Fund book. So we're a little bit quirky on Hardfire. We bring up philosophers from the 18th century. So here, this is from Liberty Fund. Voltaire, Readings on Capitalism before Adam Smith. Voltaire in 18th century Paris. He was writing in 1750. He writes that a large number of vagabonds in an area or homeless means that a place is a vibrant place to live. And he was comparing Paris against the cities of the Spanish Empire, believing that Spain and its colonies would be most prosperous and free if the empire was dissolved. So he said, oh, to Spain, if you really want to be a thriving, provide your people with a thriving place to live. Well, look at Paris, we have so many vagabonds. It must be, rather than barbarous, homelessness is a sign of wealth and negligence. In other words, homelessness might be an indicator of human flourishing, but some misdirected energy. What do you think, Voltaire? And then the script says spontaneous discussion ensues. So what do you think of Voltaire's idea? Is the homelessness really a problem? Or like Voltaire says, vagabonds are a good sign?
Who wants to go first? May
Marcy.
I?
Sure.
Okay. I love that quote. Yes, I'm glad you quoted it. And isn't it true? I mean, don't we all gravitate to what it is that we need? In other words, for people who have jobs, we gravitate to where jobs are. For people who don't have jobs, they gravitate to where more prosperity is. So yeah, here in San Francisco is a great example. We have all the techie people, all the money, and look at it.
And very good weather all year round.
And very good weather. But there's the other side of the coin, of course, that we're not living in Voltaire's time, where there you have an organic situation where the homeless are left to their own devices. This is different.
Right. You can see I got this vagabond idea when I was visiting in Montreal for a cultural economics conference, and Montreal in the summertime. And boy, they have a lot of vagabonds who are having a nice time. Yeah. And they live and let live. I'm talking about the French side of Montreal, not the English side.
Sure.
I think the most homeless I ever saw was in Key West. driving down the highway in Florida, get off of Key West, and as soon as you get onto the island, it's like there's homeless all camped up along the highway. I mean, I guess that's a good place to be homeless.
Yeah, or they were called people who follow the weather in caravans and things like that. There's a whole subculture in that. I forget what it's the crusties or something. Yeah. Okay, so Matthew, what is your take? It does seem.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I always see the homeless people in the city, and I mean, you think like, oh, why don't you just go to Florida? But I mean, there's a reason that they're here, because this is a rich city. There's opportunities. I mean, homeless people are people who want to be employed and want to have jobs, but there's some kink in the system that's preventing them. But
Yeah.
From getting those jobs or getting, homes, but they're here for a reason, and they flock in from, other places to come be homeless here for a reason.
Yeah, we in Sunset Park, we have a group of 8 vagabonds who just mind their own business in the corner of the park. So
I think it's complex, because nowadays, as Marcy was saying, we also have artificial reasons why homeless are drawn to certain cities. Like, for example, New York, like other cities, is very magnetic because of all the services that are provided. People in New York come from all over the country and even other countries because of how quickly you can get shelter placement.
right.
If you have kids.
So you're saying it's right. So you're saying it's not negligence, but it's actually due to what Marcy said. We don't have a homeless problem. We have a government problem.
Well, I think it's both factors together. You have the attractiveness of the business opportunities here, and the wealth that's here, and the trade that's here, but also the services that are being provided. So it's twofold.
Yes.
Everything together, for sure.
Yeah, but not everybody wants to live in New York City, though, right? I mean,
Well, no, I mean, many people who live here don't want to live here, but they realize the opportunity is better than the places that are nicer. I know
okay.
many people who have actually moved out of New York City because of they don't like the environment, they don't like the cost, but they
Yeah.
still come back.
Yeah. New York, as we did on the TV show about why people are leaving New York, the taxes are very high, the regulation is very high, the lockdowns were very high. We got the first one to get the passport vax city issued card, and right. So I guess so the wealthy are leaving New York City, especially with the lockdown due to the taxes, the regulation, and the city's bankrupt. Right. So people are no longer investing here, but they still might like to come and live here. Okay. Before we get to the causes of homelessness, for example, as an economist, I would say, the minimum wage, rent control, zoning, labor laws, all of these things are the root causes of homelessness. But let's ask if there is a role for the state in curing homelessness now. I am skeptical. Street people don't want to live in poorly managed city shelters, or worse, involuntary hospitalizations. I remember during the first wave of COVID, more than 20 homeless died in a single Manhattan shelter in 1 week. I remember reading this in the New York Post or the New York Times. So, well, that's just really stupid. If they were just left homeless, they wouldn't be dying, right? Do we need state intervention into the homeless situation now? Yes or no? And if yes, what should the government be doing? That's a question.
I think state intervention is very effective in maintaining homelessness when it does exist, because of the fact that when you're in the shelter system and there's so many services that are offered to you to try and move out of permanent housing, but when you start developing minimal income, you oftentimes lose a lot of benefits, and to the point that you're working for less or minimally more than what you had before without working.
Exactly.
So there's a strong disincentive to start the process and move on your own.
Yeah, that's called perpetuating poverty.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're establishing, yes, there is homelessness now. What should the state be doing? Derek is saying, don't directly subsidize the homeless. It just perpetuates poverty.
I mean, if you're going to subsidize the homeless with shelters, you have to have a structured system that actually motivates leaving the system, not staying on it. And that's not the way it's structured today. It makes it more attractive to just stay.
Right.
Yeah, if I may jump in. The question is whether there is room for state intervention. I say no, absolutely not. It seems like leaving the homeless to their own devices is probably your best bet. Like I was saying about the Voltaire quote, in the old days, you had an organic situation, economics was in the home, everything. Just
arrondissement, everything was neighborhood oriented.
Yeah, but this is completely different. I mean, the more the state gets in the discussion, the worse things get.
And politics brings conflict, not cooperation, as people fight over the resources that the state doles out.
Mm-hmm.
And everything becomes political oriented instead of human oriented.
And there's a tremendous amount of actors that are making money and stakeholders making money in homeless process. People who own the buildings, people who own private hotels, all these people are profiting off this continued system.
Yes, whether they're not for profits or for profits, right? That's the tentacles of the state.
They're still making a salary.
Of course.
Yeah.
Not for profit leaders make a lot of money, and that's the tentacles of the state. It's not just the state, but it's all the follow the money and who benefits from the status quo. If you were really cynical like me, after working in Washington, D.C. for 13 years, I was chief of the financial oversight of the State Department. The State Department wasn't all that corrupt, but I saw a lot of corrupt things in the working for the state. And perhaps the homeless and the unemployed and the benefits received are just a source of votes. And our system has become such a red versus blue giant sucking sound that blue can't seem to get enough of perpetuating poverty. And Edmund Phelps, who won the Nobel Prize, he said that that's a fault in the utilitarian philosophy of the West, where you have an elite group of people who know better than others, than the individuals themselves. So you're taking away agency from people by perpetuating their inability to take care of themselves. At least that's my view. Should we move on to the next topic? I think one of the big problems is an unsound and nebulous rule of law. Thomas Saz wrote a classic called The Myth of Mental Illness. The Myth of Mental Illness, which has been in print and updated for the last 25 years. The publisher calls it the best critique of psychiatry ever written. Has anybody read that besides me?
No, I haven't.
When I started studying classical liberalism or libertarianism or free market economics, there was a handful, 10 required laissez-faire book readings, like the 10 major. This would be in 1990 when I was living in 1986 when I was living in San Francisco, and this was one of the classics. This and 10 Simple Rules by the NYU law professor, whose name escapes me right now. Saz's main points are that it's important how we treat each other, and that the criminal code and civil law should be applied equally, no matter who we are. Further, he finds that, as us political economists might say, a psychiatry, pharma, incarceration complex. And he finds, and I agree with him, that all human beings have imperfections, and that the law should be based on behavior, not psychiatric diagnosis. His main point is that it is an abuse of power to incarcerate somebody involuntarily for mental illness. So let's come back to that about the involuntary, because that's exactly what I've been reading in the right-wing newspapers or non-left-wing newspapers. Is they want mandatory incarceration for people who are diagnosed with mental illness. Marcy, yeah, we'll get back to that. Marcy wrote a piece in California Political News and Views about this issue, and she calls placing people in the gulag with no guarantee of placing people in the system with no guarantee of effective care as a gulag.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And right, so about this mandatory incarceration thing, let's talk about that. In other words, we haven't agreed that homelessness is a problem. Only the way that it's been treated is a problem. Now let's talk about the state deciding who gets to be incarcerated for mental illness. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I would like to, Derek or Matthew? No. May I talk about the article a tiny little bit?
Please.
Yeah, and the reason that I got so interested in the homeless situation, there was on Reddit, somebody was saying, oh my gosh, I came to San Francisco and they promised all kinds of treatment, and here I am trying to get treatment, there isn't none, I'm in the system, I'm plugged in. And so I said, what is she talking about? So I did some research. Yeah, there is an incredible amount of putting people into baskets, into boxes, mental illness. Who describes that, Cameron? Your book probably says, what's mental illness is what the government decides now.
No, yeah.
Not the doctors. And so, no, I do not, even that bill that I mentioned in the Senate, Assembly, California Assembly had a bill that would put everybody into conservatorships. Come on. Do you know what a conservatorship is? And
good for the attorneys, and it's good for the bureaucrats.
I mean, it's a boondoggle beyond belief. And so should we incarcerate people? No, again, I say the same thing, leave them to their own devices. They'll go away or try to find jobs.
Right, and become friendly with those in the neighborhood, and they will help them out, personalize the thing.
Mhm,
Oh, I mean, there's shortages, labor shortages all over. The subway can't find people, contractors for renovating apartments, delivering.
No, you can't
bicycle
because,
shops.
yeah.
Right. So let's hear from Matthew and Derek. Mandatory incarceration. How is that a good idea? Because when you talk to people who the conventional wisdom is that we defunded under Reagan, defunded why it was the federal government's business in the first place, defunded treatment for mentally ill, and therefore then they were released on the streets, and then that's a problem. So I guess Matthew or Derek, do you think that we should involuntarily incarcerate people who are defecating on our streets? I haven't seen any defecation, but
I think that that's a slippery slope. You know, we sensationalize these dramatic incidents where someone commits a crime, or someone commits homicide or aggravated assault, and this person maybe was diagnosed at some point with some mental illness, and we sensationalize that, and then it becomes a very slippery slope. We try to paint people with very, very broad brush.
Yeah.
I think
we're
it's quite
giving
dangerous.
other people the right to paint the
Yeah. I mean, in terms of who's setting these standards, who's setting these criteria,
Yeah.
and we're sort of preliminarily or preemptively putting people away for their safety, even before or when they have not committed any crime.
That's right. It's also the way it's done now is an easy way for people who I don't want to use this outmoded term, limousine liberal, people who the city's taking care of that, I don't have to worry about it, it's not my problem, they're the other.
I mean, just in the years that I was teaching, which was a span of 14 years, the number of categorizations and labels. Sorry.
All the latest buzzwords in the bureaucracy. Yeah.
The number of different labels of mental illness, just with respect to the classroom,
Right.
was enormous.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you put them in the state system, and then they start getting labeled, and then it just perpetuates itself. And what's the end? Well, I guess is what we're doing is talking about it and running for office to try to reform perpetuation of poverty. Talking about it on the show.
I think it becomes attractive to people because it takes away some of your responsibility, but the flip side is that same categorization takes away some of your agency.
Yeah.
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 Right. It turns people into the other. Adam Smith wrote about that long ago, is that personalized relationships, you take care of each other, but in depersonalized or political relationships, it's always somebody else's problem.
Well, we say, for example, that if I may comment, it seems like the limousine liberals are saying, oh, but we need to love each other. We need to take care of each other. What they really mean is tax us to death here, and then the state will take care of things. Well, the flip side of that is that the state has they want to grow. They don't want to cure a problem, because if they cure the problem, their salaries would go down. They wouldn't have a job. They would have
exactly
to
right.
find work. And so that is something that somehow the limousine liberals can't compute. And so, no, if I'm going to take care of somebody, I give them the money, not.
Exactly. Yeah, that's public choice economics. You can see some books right there. Richard Wagner and George Mason University do a lot of good work on why the state grows in power for existential reasons. That's their goal, is to grow their power. So we've got 3 minutes left. That was quick. That was well done. I know that Marcy and Matthew might disagree on something. I wanted to ask you about safe spaces for needle exchange. Let's just assume it's done privately. Let's just say that it's done, I established one down here, what do you think of that? Marcy and Matthew, I believe you might disagree on safe spaces for drug injections.
Yeah,
Matthew,
I'm a big fan, and I mean, all those stories and studies I've read that they work. I mean, they're not a place that they don't sell heroin at these places. You know, they're not encouraging, but they're saying, hey, look, if you're gonna do this, please do it here. So at least we know you're using safe needles. You know, you're in a safe space. You're not out in the park being a danger to the community.
People see.
And then in there as well, you know, they have like, hey, if you want to kick it, you know, here's some information, here's some services. And so I think, you know, the community doesn't have any, shouldn't really be afraid of having these methadone clinics around, because I think, you know, if the people who go there know that they have a problem, you know, they're not really a threat to societies, in my opinion.
my opinion is no. That's part of the boondoggle. These entire, you know, like safe spaces, injection sites, all kinds of services. You're just telling the people the door is open. Come, we have these injection sites. You know, we have this. Nobody's going to get clean. Everybody's going to go there and take advantage of the system. So I think we are really kind of in denial here. It is not organic as it should be.
Don't allow another excuse for a state-funded intervention, right? But what we were doing, we were making it up and saying we're doing it privately. But we also, the last shows we did were on victimless crime, and we said, well, the way to get prostitution, gambling, and drug use off the street is to make it legal. Anyway, I think we should wrap it up. Unless does
I
anybody?
agree with that.
Yeah. Anybody have anything they want to add before we?
I just wanted to say, at the end of the day, I mean, homelessness is really just kind of a cause of a bunch of systemic problems.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned in the beginning. It's bad zoning that doesn't allow enough housing. There's people who are homeless who have jobs. End of the day, that just shouldn't be the case. There's a lot of, you know, like Derek was talking about, there's a lot of people who are trying to get back on their feet, and the system pushes them back down again by taking away, you know, a step that they're trying to step on to get out of poverty. And, you know, if we're really gonna, I mean, I'm not a fan of completely getting rid of the state in one foul swoop, but I mean, we have to look and realize what the state is doing wrong and try and, you know, slowly remove the state and then insert the community without the state into the solution for homelessness.
Yes.
Agreed.
Voluntary exchange.
As well. I think people have learned so much dependency. It'd be very hard to immediately unlearn that level of dependency without looking like we failed them.
Very good. So thank you very much for our discussion on the city and the homeless. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Hardfire Media. Thank you, Marcy, Matthew, and Derek. And we'll
Thank you.
see you next time. Thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you.
For the greater community. 1, 2,